Hello, guys. Welcome and thank you for joining us to launch Diversity Within, an exciting new inclusive marketing and communications agency dedicated to reaching diverse audiences all over the UK. My name's Anthony, and I am the Senior Digital Marketing Executive here at Diversity Within. I can tell you firsthand that a lot of love, time, and coffee has gone into forming this fantastic platform over the last 6 months. We're so eager to share diversity with you all today, as we think it could be a game changer for organizations, agencies, communicators, and so on. To provide you with more information and a vision is the spectacular Mavis Amankwah. In case you didn't know, Mavis was the co-founder and former managing director of Rich Vision's Diversity Comms, one of the most influential diversity specialist agencies in the UK throughout the 2000s. Aside from receiving numerous accolades for their work and many features from top publications such as PR Week and The Guardian, Mavis and Rich Visions has campaigned for many high-profile names such as Home Office, Metropolitan Police, Liverpool City Council, ASDA, and many more. But I'm sure she can share all that with you. So without any more delay, let's welcome Mavis Amankwah.
Hello, good morning, Happy Tuesday, everybody. And it's really interesting, today's date, 22/2/22. Not sure what that means, but all I know, there's lots of twos happening. So good morning to you and thank you for joining us. And, it's really a pleasure to have you on here to take out your time to find out more about diversity within in terms of what we do and how we can help you. So I'm going to be doing a short presentation, just a little bit about diversity and inclusion and giving you some information about what we do. And then also we've got some fantastic D&I experts who will also be telling you some of the areas that they work within and giving some tips and advice. So I'm really, really excited. We are expecting some more people, but we'll still be getting on with the presentation. Just to let you know that this is being recorded, so hopefully everybody's okay with the recordings, because we would like to share this fantastic launch with everyone that's interested in diversity. So a little bit about myself. I am very passionate. I'm a passionate lady. And I think a number of reasons why I'm passionate about D&I is, first of all, I'm a woman of colour, so a black woman. I was born and raised in the UK. My mum came here in 1972 when there were signs that said no Irish, no blacks, no dogs. She was supposed to stay for about 5 years and she ended up staying nearly 50 years, had me about 2 years later. And I was, brought up in the East End of London, Canning Town to be precise. And back in those days, it was very racist in terms of, there wasn't a lot of people from ethnic minorities in the area. So when I was at school, I did face a lot of racism, a lot of bullying, but it made me stronger. But when I was young, I wasn't actually sure why I was being bullied and why people were acting differently. But over the years, I kind of gathered it was just the fact that I was different from everybody else. My hair was different, my skin color was different, and my surname was different. But I think that has basically molded me to be the person that I am today, and also to really just show people that, it is about how do we reach out to all communities? How do we make our campaigns inclusive? How do people understand that, people are from different areas from all over the world, whether they're young children in the playground to, elderly people? How do we make everybody feel as special as they want to be, and at the same time to address the areas of racism, diversity, and inclusion? So, I always have that, that famous saying that says that the only thing that should be separated by color is washing or laundry. And I absolutely agree with that. So over the years, I've become very passionate about my identity. Before, I was very ashamed of who I was and my identity, being a young person from the Black community, just because I was picked on so much, and it made me think there were so many things wrong with me. But then when I got to the age of 15 and I had the opportunity to go to Ghana, where my parents are originally from, for the first time, I actually realized that, wow, this is where I'm from. I love this place. And what I heard about Africa when I was a young child was completely different from what I saw. And then when I went over to Ghana and I saw, the culture and the diversity within the tribes and the regions, and, it made me start really embracing and really accepting who I was and actually loving who I was. And from there, I kind of started off working within the area of diversity. I used to work on a lot of cultural events. I started working with the BBC in terms of addressing diversity, and loads of big brands that wanted to reach out to diverse communities for a number of reasons. And we know that within diversity and inclusion, the biggest barriers are language, race, religion, and also cultural barriers. So I basically, am the gap to help people that want to reach diverse communities. The new word that they use, or the word that they're using at the moment, is the BAME community, Black, Asian, Minority, Ethnic. Whether that is politically correct or not, I think that's for another conversation, but it's about, how do you include people from all communities, all diverse groups into your campaigns, whether it be a recruitment campaign or a HR campaign. I'm also an entrepreneur running around 3 businesses. So I have the Rich Visions, which I'm the co-founder of Rich Visions, Women Like Me, and I also have my own brand, Mavis Amankwah, as well. If you could just go back one slide for us, that would be great. So D&I consultant, I've been doing D&I consultancy probably for about 18 years now, and I've seen, there has been massive improvement in this arena, and people are starting to address the issues, and people really want to find out more and get to know how they can make their campaigns more inclusive and educate people as well. So, it's been a real great journey, and I'm just seeing the development of D&I growing. I'm a strong educator. If I knew back then when I was in a school playground, I would have been able to tell, some of those young children that were picking on me that I was no different from them. So I've learned to, work towards educating people in a fun way, because I think when it comes to diversity and inclusion, yes, it is a very serious matter, but I think we can make it fun, and we can also, educate people, in a fun way than, getting a stick out and saying, right, this is how it should be done, or this is the right way. Also, I'm an advocate for D&I and also a marketing professional. So I sit in, many areas. So I look at diversity and inclusion from someone who has experienced it and lives and breathes, the areas of diversity and inclusion. And then also I'm a marketing professional, so I know, what campaigns or what appeals to different audiences, such as images and wording and languages to use, cultural barriers. And at the same time, I'm really for championing diversity and inclusion. So that's me in a nutshell. As I said earlier, I also run a couple of businesses. So we've got Rich Visions, where we really started off the whole kind of diversity and inclusion back in around 2004, actually, where we started Rich Visions as a kind of ethnic communications agency, and then over years grew the industry. And then we started off with Rich Visions Small Business, which helps small businesses in growing, mostly ethnic minority or BAME businesses, diversity within, why you're here today. And we also have another agency, Women Like Me, where we help women in business with social media, business support, and also help them to reach diverse audiences too. So the team that we have an amazing team within Diversity Within. As Anthony said, we've been basically working over the last 6 months to bring this to fruition, because we feel that over the last kind of few years, before the pandemic and also during the pandemic, there was a lot of talk and, incidents in regards to racism, diversity and inclusion, such as Black Lives Matters and other areas. So we thought that it would be good to bring together an agency and a consultancy that could help and address some of these areas. So there's myself, Mavis. We've got my colleague, digital marketing assistant, Amanda Ajakuma, who's with us. And we also have Hannah, who's a digital marketing assistant, and Anthony as well, as a digital marketing manager. So they work within the diversity diversity within to, organize events such as this. They're also working with our digital marketing in terms of, people may want to be able to reach diverse audiences and don't know how. So, our team work towards doing specific campaigns to reach the audiences, as well as giving you some consultancy and advice on what to do, depending on what area or department you're working with. Next slide. So as we know, the one-size-fits-all approach does not suit our diverse society. We know that there are people, especially here in the UK, who come from all over the world, speaking so many languages. Even if you look at London alone, you see the diversity of London and how it's a melting pot. And you also see that across some of the major cities across the UK, and I've seen that in the smaller cities as well, in places such as Essex. So the one-size-fits-all approach does not suit our diverse society. So what do we need to do as a community? And when I'm saying community, people within the communications industry, marketeers, anyone that's interested in making a difference to society, how do we build and grow and learn and help us to build bridges and not walls? Thank you. So I've told you a little bit about myself, so I won't spend too much time on that. But as I said, it's about helping you to develop strategies and campaigns, help you with targeted recruitment campaigns, or maybe you're trying to do a marketing or media relations campaign for your organization, your agency, or for a client. Definitely can help you, and also have lots of contacts within the media as well. So really great to, be here and to meet some of you for the first time. Yeah, thank you. Next slide. So our expertise as an agency and a consultancy is that we are results driven. So we can help you with building up any campaign that you want in terms of inclusiveness or diversity. So maybe you want to do a positive discrimination campaign and you're not sure how to go about it. We can help you with that. We have a team of experts within their areas that they will be speaking later on, and we have the knowledge, the understanding, and know the trends, the marketing trends of the BAME community, and we are always consistently and constantly interacting with the BAME community as well. So our expertise comes firsthand. We can work with you from top level, working within the media, or it could be grassroots, working within churches, doing outreach, going to specific BAME outlets and touch points to reach out to the community to spread a message about a campaign or project. So what have we done? Well, whilst I was under directorship of Rich Visions as the co-founder, we've done lots of campaigns. I must admit, we've done so many campaigns, very different ones as well. And I think, here are some that I kind of will share with you. So we've kind of encouraged a broader base of applicants from diverse communities to enter the veterinary profession. So, some of you may not be aware, but for some BAME communities, working with animals is a taboo. So how do you convince people from the BAME community that the veterinary area, the career, if you want to think about that area as a career, it is something that a lot of the BAME community would not think about. So if you've got a young person who's in school, they go to a careers day, in school, and then they go home and say, Mum, I was at a careers day, and I spoke to, let's say, RCVS, Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, and they were telling me about me thinking about a career working with pets. The parents most likely to say, no, that's not a profession. So we, a few years ago, had to work with them through PR focus groups and direct mail to reach out to young people from the BAME community, and also to their parents about, choosing a profession within the veterinary industry. We've also done outreach campaigns. So it could be anything from a commercial perspective. So I don't know if you remember many years ago when the Polish community first came, in terms of once the EU was open, there was lots of campaigns where the Polish community needed to send money home. So we basically worked with a number of money transfer companies to help to reach the Polish community, and also some of the banks as well. And that was through surveys and focus groups. And then we also worked on a different campaign, which was about anti-drug driving, helping young people to understand what happens when you take drugs and drive. And we had to do a campaign for Newham Road Safety Team, and that was PR and community engagement. So we have a broad range of campaigns and projects that we have worked over the last, I'd say, 15 years. Next slide. So who do we work with? So within Diversity Within and all the work that we've done in the past, for 2022, we are looking to work more with senior management teams of agencies and organizations. So it could be PR agencies, marketing agencies, digital marketing agencies, any agency that needs to get their communications out there, whether it's to get a message out for their client, or they want to do a recruitment campaign to recruit more people from BAME communities, people that work within the D&I division, HR specialists, marketing specialists, diversity specialists, and communication advocates. So we're working with quite a range of people and agencies and organizations and individuals too. So, question to everyone that's on here, and it would be good to get some form of feedback in terms of diversity and inclusion within your area of work. Do you think you are doing enough? And it would be nice to hear from you. You could just put your information in the chat. You could just put yes or no, maybe, thinking about it, just so that we can get a rough idea. So do you think you are doing enough to address diversity, equality, and inclusion within your workspace, your workplace, or the project that you're working on? Please do let us know. Anybody? Or if you like to speak. Oh, okay. Hi, Marcia. Thank you so much. So, okay. So Marcia says we're doing a lot. Okay, that's great. Okay. Yeah. Michelle saying there's enough room for improvement. But yeah, when is it enough? That's a very good question, because, you know, it's something that is just ongoing and you feel that you've achieved, but then there's always more that can be done. So that's really interesting as well. So thank you so much. So, you know, some of you have said, yes, there's always room for improvement. And I think that's in anything that we do, you know, whether it's been working within a certain area or industry, there's always more we can do to improve. Okay, yeah. Okay, making good steps. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Marcia. And also Titi Lopez also saying that you're also working towards, you know, making a difference. But as we know, diversity is a lot more than race as well. You know, we're looking at the 7 strands. So when you look at gender, you look at LGBTIA plus community, you look at race, you look at relations, disability. There are so many strands to it. So it's looking at where you feel that you need to make a difference. Thank you. Next slide. So the business case, I believe, you know, most of you here understand what needs to be done in terms of diversity inclusion, but just really to give you an overview, you know, there are so many different reasons why there is a business case for diversity. So first of all, it's about expanding business growth and profitability for those of you that are looking to reach out to a wider audience. Planning and communicating, you know, campaigns that reach targeted audiences is great, because when you include a lot of people within a campaign, it helps you to really grow. Also, being able to adjust your corporate communications to reflect the population. And I'll be talking a little bit about the census 2021. Because the last census was 2011 and the results for the 2021 census is out in May 2022. And that's going to be very interesting in terms of the figures that are going to be revealed and how many we have, how much we've grown in terms of the BME community. And then also making sure that your campaigns, your CSR campaigns and programs maximize coverage and reach. And from a commercial perspective, if you have competitors, a lot of your competitors will not be tapping into this market. who have a high spending power. Next slide. So adjusting your corporate communications towards sensitivity is important, you know, ensuring that your imagery is not offensive to any community, and you've taken into consideration beliefs and attitudes and practices, for example, on a communications leaflet. Complying with the law, which you know, equality and diversity, there are many laws within E&D. Also building up trust, and I think trust is something that we build up in any area of life. So within D&E, whether it's amongst your stakeholders, your staff, your suppliers, consumers, and the communities, it's very important. Building up staff morale within the workplace reduces turnover and brings in innovation as well, and also maintains a diverse workforce. And we know all of this because there's lots of statistics and research that have been done to back some of the things that I'm saying. Next slide. So that was a little bit about me. I'll be back later on, but I would love you to meet some amazing people that we are going to be working with over the next few years in regards to diversity and equality. Well, I'm going to be calling up our speakers very soon. We have Misha Raymond, we have Sam Kusi, we have Paula Gardner, and we have Asari Sen-Hill. They're going to be giving you some information in regards to what they do, the areas of diversity and inclusion that they cover, and also going to be giving you some tips and advice. I just would like to bring up Michelle Raymond's bio, and I'll be introducing everybody accordingly. So I'm just bringing up Michelle's bio. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to our next speaker for today, and her name is Michelle Raymond. Oops, sorry, my screen's just gone blank. 1 second for me. Just lost my slide. 1 second. Okay. So Michelle Raymond has over 20 years experience in human resources and training. She is recognized for creating the culture and attitude shift that inspires others to break down their imagined limitations and achieve personal and professional success. Aside from running her own consultancy, The People's Partner, which she provides leadership training and coaching for organizations, Michelle also provides an array of inclusive leadership training that includes emotional intelligence, motivating teams, and developing courageous conversations for middle managers and senior leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Michelle Raymond.
Thank you so much, Mavis. A really great introduction so far, and a good deep insight into what diversity within can do. And I think it's really, really important. Having worked in HR practically all my life, I can see I've been in organisations where they've said the right things, but when push comes to shove, they haven't done the right things. And you mentioned a number of stats, and there's a couple of stats that I use quite often, having done diversity and inclusion race training with BT, Deloitte, Lloyds Banking Group, and I also sit on Lloyds Banking Group's board of their Black Business Board to ensure that the bank is doing more to help Black businesses, Black-owned businesses. So if anyone needs any resources on that, I have a plethora of resources to support you in that. In terms of some of the stats that you mentioned, and some of the ones that I tend to use is only 16% of British Muslims are represented in top professions as compared to 30% of other groups. The combined Pakistani and Bangladeshi ethnic group have the lowest percentage of workers in professional jobs within the UK. And then we see with our within the Black experience, in the workplace, 25% of Black respondents felt that they were racially discriminated against when looking for work. I see this as a HR person when I'm interviewing. I see it comes down to the name, the schooling, their education, all of this plays a part. And I've had to really pull up some of the CEOs, which have, as you can imagine, they've hired me to help recruit. And then I've seen the way they've worked. Clearly, I ended up losing some of these contracts, but I think it's about us standing up and knowing that sometimes we're going to be shot down, but doing the right thing. Also, back in January of last year, there were only 4 Black and Asian CEOs at FTSE 100 companies. But in February, Green Park reported there were no Black executives in the top 3 roles of FTSE 100 firms. But yet we know that inclusivity, when a company is truly inclusive, and I mean inclusive in terms of neurodiversity, sexual diversity, marriage, pregnancy, all the 9 protected characteristics, we see there's an increase in terms of organizations reaching their financial targets. We also see that they're 3 times more likely to be high performing organizations. We also see that they're 6 times more likely to be innovative and agile. So there is a great business case for being inclusive and being more diverse. And in terms of what I want to bring to the table, I guess, is to use my experience in terms of my years of HR, delivering training with senior leaders and emerging leaders, and seeing firsthand how CEOs, how managers, some of them are unaware, some of them might be through ignorance, some of it could be through bias. There's a number of things, and it's about working with companies who are willing to unpick the real reasons why they don't see this, and why their company might be stagnated, or the challenging companies who are still growing but yet are not diverse. And it's about getting them to see, yes, you may be still growing, but there's more that you can do in terms of corporate social responsibility, in terms of just the morals and the values of the organization, missing out on diverse talent. So I want to be able to bring some of my own expertise to the table. I want to bring in some of the networks of companies that I know may be looking for this, and they just need an agency like Diversity within to really drive change. And it's about us as experienced leaders, as professionals, to understand it's not going to be easy. And we have to make sure that we're psychologically safe as well, because some of the things that we'll see, we'll get angry, we'll be upset, it's going to affect us emotionally. But I think if we support each other, we can get through this and we can make a bigger impact to the community, to the wider organization. So that's what I would love to add. And as I said, feel free to contact me through Diversity Within or through LinkedIn. If you need access to any resources, I'd be more than happy to share, as I've been given the green light by Lloyds Banking Group to share any resources with other people who may be interested. Thank you for having me, Mavis.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was really nice and really good. We're speaking on the same hymn sheet in terms of working together and helping each other and making a difference. Does anyone have any questions for Michelle, please? Any questions for Michelle? Sorry, I get a little bit of a delayed reaction, so I just want to give it a few seconds because I see messages come in after. Okay. All right, there you go. Well done, Michelle. Thank you so much. And Michelle's put her details in there. Okay, great. So our next speaker, who I'd like to introduce, can we get the slide up? His name is Sam Kusi. He's a motivational key speaker, specializing in both diversity and inclusion, and also unconscious bias. He combines research, storytelling, and refreshing humor to illustrate how diversity and inclusion can ensure organizations achieve exponential results and bring the best out of untapped talent. Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Kusi, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mavis and Michelle, for such an energetic and lively and informative start. Awesome stuff. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to start by saying that I think the phrase or the name diversity within is phenomenal, because a lot of the issues that are pertaining to diversity and inclusion and equality are not external issues, they're internal issues. You see, it's all about mindset. As I always say, the inner world always creates the outer world, whether that be as individuals or in business. I put it this way when it comes to diversity and inclusion in business. Businesses without diversity are like a hot dog without ketchup. Not as appealing as it should be. There's something missing, right? And so in order for our business endeavors to become more appealing, more palatable, and more profitable, diversity and inclusion must be more than a nice to have. It's got to be a business imperative. And so I give a host of talks on the subject of diversity and inclusion, particularly as it pertains to the workplace. And some of the most sought after talks are what I like to call my top 4. And they are as follows. So I give a talk called Respond to the Deafening Elephant in the Boardroom. And the key question that the talk answers is this: what practical strategies are in place to expedite the much needed uptick for women on boards? So we're talking about women on boards now, because there was an interesting study done not so long ago regarding leaders of FTSE 100 companies. And it was found out that there are more men with the name of John who lead FTSE 100 companies than there are women bosses combined in that space, which is staggering. And it's kind of an insult as well. But it shows that there's still a lot that needs to be done in the way of boardroom excellence as it pertains to diversity. Because a lot of companies are making strides with diversity, but what you're finding is it's lower down in the company, right? But as a key decision maker, women are still very much underrepresented. So that's what that talk deals with. The other talk that I do is called How Do We Go from Patrons to Pioneers of Diversity? How do we go from patrons to pioneers of diversity? And in this talk, it really unravels the disparities that deal with race. So I talk a lot about allyship and how races that are more represented can become allies for those that are underrepresented. Because truth be told, in order to have real diversity, you're never really going to get it until you have the sharing of power. And that's why it's so imperative to not just become a patron of diversity, but a pioneer. So the talk explores how businesses can really rid themselves of the overtones of patronage and tokenism, which are often associated with diversity, but rather become pioneers of diversity. The other thing is this, the third talk, the disability diversity deficit. Include the excluded, because arguably, the most underrepresented group are disabled people, whether that be in physical disability or neurodiverse ones. So what is the representation when it comes to disability, those with neurodiverse disabilities in your workplace? A lot of food for thought. And as Mavis said at the outset, the aim of these talks are not to point a finger or anything like that. We all have room for improvement. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it's really to see, I like to call it like a MOT, a diversity MOT, see where we can improve and how we're doing as opposed to last year. And then I guess the fourth talk that I give is called Neutralizing the Gravitational Pull of Unconscious Bias. So a bit of a mouthful there, but it's not as complicated as it sounds. Neutralizing the gravitational pull of unconscious bias. And the illustration I like to use is to do with high blood pressure, right? Because high blood pressure doesn't make a sound, but it's there, you see. And when it comes to our unconscious biases, we may not overtly be projecting them or, by means of what we say, but by our actions and by our decision making, that's when they really come to the fore. So this talks about how businesses can improve in their company culture and their business behavior by looking at the unconscious biases which may lie therein and doing their best to eradicate them. And so I guess in closing, I'll put it this way. The only place where bias should come before diversity and inclusion is in the dictionary. We need a more inclusive culture in society and in business. And these talks will help us to, make some strides to achieving that level of boardroom excellence that we all need in order to improve representation and the profitability of businesses as well. And so thank you for listening. I'd like to hand back over to Mavis.
Thank you so much, Sam. Really, really interesting. And as I said earlier, along with Michelle, we're all singing on the same hymn sheet. Anyone would have thought that we've read each other's notes, but we haven't, because we're all seeing, it's all going to the same direction of building and making a better society. And I love it. Diversity, MOT, there's always room for improvement, and, patrons to pioneers. That's what we're all doing here. And that's why we've all come together to champion diversity and inclusion, and also to celebrate, what's been achieved so far. As I said, back in the 70s when I was born, there was hardly no diversity in terms of diversity and inclusion, but we've come a long way over the last 40 years or so. So thank you so much, Sam, for that. And also thank you, Michelle. We've heard from two great speakers so far, and they're really, really paving the way for diversity and inclusion. And they're going to be part of us at Diversity Within. So thank you. So our next speaker, who is also a great friend, and everybody on here, we're all great friends, as well as associates working within the different areas, be it marketing and diversity inclusion. I'd like to invite our next speaker, who I've known for a number of years. Her name is Paula Gardner. She's a business psychologist, career coach, and health practitioner. Her work around D&I includes psychology-based team building activities to help bond diverse teams, and audits to look at D&I within existing businesses, focusing on employee attitudes, recruitment, and reputation. She's interested in neurodiversity in regards to autism and ADHD, which can add an extra layer to your D&I practices. Ladies and gentlemen, Paula Gardner. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you, Mavis. That was a lovely intro. So yes, as Mavis told you, I am a business psychologist, but previous to that, 5 years ago, I retrained as a business psychologist, but previous to that, I ran my own PR and marketing agency. So everything that I do, I come from two different angles. One is the psychology angle, and one actually is a very business orientated angle, looking at everything from the viewpoint of running a business. So that gives me two very interesting perspectives. And as Mavis pointed out, one of my interests is neurodiversity. And I know both Sam and Michelle have mentioned neurodiversity too. So neurodiversity can mean anything from autism to Asperger's to ADHD, and in fact there's something called PDD, which basically people who show elements of any of these, but without actually being formally diagnosed or fitting into a certain box. And there is a really, really strong business case for both reaching out and recruiting these people on our teams, but also including them in marketing campaigns. I mean, if you think about the case studies that you might read in marketing PR campaigns, how often do they focus on someone that has ADHD, for instance? From a purely work-wise perspective, people who fall on the autistic spectrum have brilliant, usually often have brilliant focus, amazing attention to detail, which benefits every workplace. And people with ADHD, they're often very creative, very inspirational and motivational, and absolutely brilliant at bonding a team together. So like everybody else, I'm going to share some stats here. The National Autistic Society basically report that around 700,000 people are diagnosed as being on the spectrum at any one time over the last 5 years. Also really interesting, in the US, so the US Department of Education has estimated that ADSD is increasing between 10 and 17% each year. So when I first read that, I actually thought it was a decade, and then my eyes went back to it and realized it was each year. So if you think about that, is going to be, a massive part of our workforce. And whether it's because more people feel happier about talking about these things and therefore going to be diagnosed, or whether it's growing, I don't know, we don't know, but the fact is that it is growing. And those stats from the US, the stats from the UK are not going to be that different. So I've told you a few stats and figures, but I'm actually going to tell you a little bit of a story now. And this is one of the main reasons why I actually became interested in neurodiversity. So I was working with a lady who owns her own tax accountancy and tax consultancy up in North London. And we were working on recruitment together and creating a campaign for recruitment. And one of the outstanding applicants that came in to see her was a lady she was on the autistic spectrum. And the owner of the agency was blown away by her approach to tax. So she was saying that normally when people look at figures, they're checking that everything is okay. But this particular lady was actually really looking for what was wrong. And if you think about it, let's compare it to going up in space in a spaceship. Who would you rather have checking over the engineering? Somebody that was looking for that everything was all right, or somebody that was looking for anything that could be potentially wrong? I think I would go with the one that was looking for something that could potentially be wrong. So my client, the agency owner, decided to go with this lady. And for the first few months, she was blown away by her work. But then it started deteriorating a little, and she wasn't quite sure how to deal with this. So should she, ask her if everything was all right at home, any issues in the workplace? So eventually she sat down with her, and she was talking with her about how she was finding work and so on, just trying to get to the root of what was going on. And the employee, she was very honest and upfront, and she said, actually, I am finding it really hard to work here. There's a radio going on in the office. Outside, there's the reception area with a TV going on so that clients can, watch the news while they're waiting to see their accountant. People's desks, it's just mess everywhere. And, there's coats all over the place, bags all over the place. And actually, my mind finds it really hard to focus like this. So it was sort of left there, and the employer went away, and her first reaction was, as I'm guessing that many of us would react, when faced with a criticism of how we work and, our surroundings. Her first reaction was, well, okay, then she's obviously not right for us. This is how we've always done it. I can't change it. This is how we are. But on consideration, she started to think about, well, what if she has a point? What if, actually the way that we are is not conducive to our best work and, just to our best environment. So we went back and we listened exactly to the employee and her suggestions, and the employer decided to implement them on a 3-month basis. One, to keep her employee happy, but two, just to see how everybody else, reacted to it. And at first there were the usual grumblings and so on. Nobody likes change. But at the end of those 3 months, everybody reported that they felt better in the surroundings. So there was soft music out in the reception area. People could wear headphones so they could listen to whatever they want, music, news, the archers, as long as they got on with the work, they could listen to what they want. They had coat racks installed, bags under the table, clear desk policy at night. Everybody's work improved. Not only did everybody's work improve, everyone felt a bit lighter because there was less clutter around. There was less time spent looking for bits and files and all that sort of thing. So for me, I thought this was a wonderful story of how just listening to somebody else's viewpoint on life, somebody else's schema, the way that they make sense of the world, and how a really tangible example of how, just listening to everybody, hearing their viewpoints and bringing them in and trialing them out, how that can really improve a workplace. And that's actually what inspired me to look more into this area. And the way that I work is I do a lot around recruitment, so looking at recruitment campaigns and also processes to attract people who may be neurodiverse. Also from a PR and marketing campaign, looking at how we can bring this into the PR and marketing campaign, for instance, during case studies, and also teams. So as a business psychologist, I do a lot of work with teams. So, attracting and bringing together diverse teams is brilliant, but actually, the other magic word here is teams. You've got to create a team out of those people. And, sometimes you're lucky and that team, bonds and it happens all together beautifully. Sometimes it has to be worked at. And that's where I come in that I create exercises and events and experiences that help create that team feeling so that everybody feels valued, can share their viewpoints, what they've learned from their experiences, their backgrounds, and it actually works for the team as a whole. So that's me. And again, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or just say hello on LinkedIn. And anybody have any questions for me here?
Does anyone have any questions for Paula? Any questions? Okay. All right, well, thank you so much, Paul. I don't think anyone's got any questions, but that was a very great story. It's nice to hear real life stories where someone would listen and actually take some action and make a change, and you see the difference that's made as well. So that's really good, and really happy that you are part of the diversity within team. And as you can hear from our speakers, amazing, lots of experience, and they've been able to share their experiences and also helping to make a difference, make a change, and making it much more easier. I think sometimes we need to also think about that, making it more easier and simpler for people. When it's so complicated and complex, people actually get put off. But when you make it simple and nice, people love to embrace change when it's simple. So thank you so much, Paula. Okay, so our next speaker who we have is also a specialist within the diversity and arena. And as we know, diversity and inclusion, it's huge. It's such a big area. We just don't realize how big this area is, but there's so, many areas to it. And even just, the 5 speakers, including myself that you have today, we all have different experiences within our industry, be it working from a HR positive inclusion campaign to working on a marketing campaign to reach out to specific audiences from diverse communities, to working within just interviewing, you know, doing the interviews, unconscious biases. So really good. So thank you so much for all our speakers. And our last speaker today in terms of diversity and inclusion, also good friend and, you know, associate, Asari Senthill. So Asari helps business owners and directors to achieve their goals. He mentors owners to double their profits, improve their staff with with effective marketing and better their systems. He spent the last 10 years as an independent diversity advisor for the National Centre for Diversity and has a wide range of experience working within the public sector, voluntary and profit sector corporations, and has done some really great specialisms in terms of inclusive leadership, race awareness and equality audits. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Asari Senthill.
Hi, everybody. Thanks very much for that. Thanks, Mavis. Thanks for all the other speakers. I just mentioned before I talk a bit more about my contribution is about the stories from Paula were really interesting because it reminded me working with a very large charity who had somebody who was autistic on reception. And that was so powerful because they made a decision, they made a strategic decision about it, but actually everybody who visited their headquarters, obviously this is pre-COVID, when people were obviously going to offices, when everybody visited their corporate headquarters, it was very clear that this organization was making a statement. I know it can be, people can see it as tokenistic, but it wasn't tokenistic, this person was good at their job, but it was very symbolic that the first person you met had autism. And all the rooms that you met in, if you met in the boardroom or you met in any of the rooms for training, they were all named after somebody who was autistic or somebody who was on the autistic spectrum or, as you said, had dyslexia or, you know, a famous person in history, which was really interesting because a lot of people either never heard of them or there's some famous people that didn't know that they were on the autistic spectrum or had one of these spectrums. Anyway, just moving on, just want to basically say that how I approach things and through my experience working with a range of different corporates and different organizations, I like to start with what I call your story. I think this is vital. So, the other example I wanted to mention, Paula, in mention that is the Met Office. What's the Met Office story? Now, the Met Office, I'll just give a couple of examples. The Met Office story is that they're providing services to defense industry. So they're providing services because the weather and what happens with the weather forecast is a lot to do with whether you can fly planes and deal with any military threats and all the rest of it. So there's a very secret aspect of them. But of course, they provide all the weather forecasts across the nation. What you see on the BBC weather and all that is Met's office. A lot of it comes from the Met Office, and now it's become much more digitalized. But what's interesting is a very high percentage of their staff are on the autistic spectrum because it is quite science-based and very specific numbers. And what's interesting, I don't know if any of you have seen The Good Doctor. There's actually a fictional film, American film. It's actually a British actor who plays an autistic doctor. It's absolutely brilliant. Myself and my wife, we absolutely love this program. And what's interesting in it is how this person is such a brilliant doctor, but struggles a little bit more around people and how they deal with that whole situation. And it's just a fascinating program. But what it shows is that, as Paula rightfully says, the brilliance in certain areas that are exceptional ability, but he just needed a bit of support around, you know, it's not always the best thing to tell somebody they got cancer then and going to live 2 weeks and just tell them cold. So he needed a bit of support about the messaging. So let's just give you another example in terms of the story. What's the story of so the story of Lloyd's of London? I'll just give another example. This is different to Lloyd's, the banking. This is Lloyd's, the insurance side of it. So Lloyd's, interesting journey. In the last few years, Lloyd's have come open and said, yes, we had a hand in the slave trade. So in other words, their story is the history of insurance came out of the slave trade. Now, rather than them hiding this and sort of ducking away from it and not dealing with the elephant in the room, as Sam would say, they basically said, our story is ingrained in that history and we're just going to acknowledge it. We're not going to duck away from it anymore. We're just going to go out there and say, you know what, hands up, we were involved in the slave trade and the first ships that were insured by people like us from Lloyd's. But we've recognized that that was a heinous crime and we're going to do something about it. And one of the things they said was we're going to make our organization more diverse and we're going to help to make the insurance industry more diverse. So they've got a progressive program for African, Caribbean and Asian people who want to aspire to become senior managers and senior leaders. So I'm doing some work with them around that. But it's just an example of what's the story. What is the story? What is it you're trying to achieve? What's the backdrop? What's your context? What you're trying to sell? What is your product? Who is your audience, and what you're trying to say? And sometimes you have to hold your hand up and say, look, it is what it is. That's the history. We're not going to duck away from it. Or you've got a great history of being a diverse organization, having diverse employees, but maybe not at senior levels. So what is the story in terms of that? What is it you're trying to achieve? Is it that your gender diversity is not very good? Is it the people who you don't employ enough people with a disability? Is it that you don't employ people with LGBT? Or there isn't enough ethnic diversity at senior levels? What is the story of your organization? Who are you trying to serve? So what's the diversity of your customers? Do you reflect them? Because there's a whole story to be told about the diversity of your staff, what you're seeking to achieve and why you're seeking to achieve it. Now, you might have slightly different nuances on the message to customers as you would internally, but hopefully you can mirror the two. John Lewis is an example of this. John Lewis did a video with their staff saying, what's microaggressions, what's okay and what's not okay. And they got their African, Caribbean and Asian staff to just say what's okay and how they feel about different microaggressions, what's okay, what they can do and what you can't do. That's just an example, but that's the story of John Lewis. It's a cooperative, it's owned by the staff, it's a very diverse, it serves a very diverse population in very major cities and across the UK. So the context is very important. So once we've got that understanding of what the context is, what's your vision? Is your vision to expand the organization into markets that you haven't yet touched? So you have people like Metro Bank and people like that that come into the market. Some organizations have said, you know what, the Asian business market or the small business sector amongst the Turkish community or the small business sector is growing in the African Caribbean community. We don't have their business at the moment. How do we get their business? So there's lots of different examples of how organizations have thought about their strategy and really targeted the market. Look at Lucozade. Lucozade repositioned, I'm showing my age a bit here. Lucozade repositioned themselves from a product that was seen as something you take to somebody who's sick in a hospital. That shows how old I am. When you used to bring a bottle of Lucozade to people when they're in hospital, they totally repositioned themselves as the coolest thing ever in sports by putting sports sponsors, smaller bottles for lunchtime, for walking on the street, drinking casually, totally transformed the product. And what do they do? If you look at the most recent one, I showed my son, it absolutely targeted his demographic. My son's 17. He wears sliders. They call them sliders. I call them flip-flops. He calls them sliders and he wears socks with them, right? And this guy having a hula hoop around him, a black youth having a hula hoop around him, looking as cool as anything, walking down the road and with a Lucozade or whatever. It's very, very, very clever marketing because you make it a cool product and you target a certain demographic. Now, who buys Lucozade today compared to who was buying Lucozade years ago? It was much more older people who are, a bit more mature would buy Lucozade. Now, young people buy Lucozade, and who's the cool people in all centers around? So this is what I mean by balancing the story with the business case. There's another aspect that I like to mention as well, is that, of course, internally, that could be the easy bit in a way. Sometimes could be the easy bit, but could be more challenging depending on how diverse your senior manager is. But also what I like to add on from what Paula was saying is my take on neurodiversity is I look at the issues around autism and so on, but I also look at some of the stuff that comes out of books like Rebel Ideas. I love the book Rebel Ideas by Matthew Syed, and I also love the book Be More Pirate. In other words, be a rebel. It's encouraging people to be rebels at work. In other words, not in a negative way, but to say diversity of thinking. So you see, one of the dangers, like Google, for example, Google had an issue where they recruit mostly white males and Asian males, because that reflects who's doing technology degrees in the United States. Now, that's okay to a point, but it's not very diverse. And also the danger of the diversity is the same Asian males and the same white males that are coming out of university, going to the same universities, learning the same things. So that's another danger of diversity. So whilst they may be Asian and they may be white, but they're coming from the same universities with the same way of thinking. And I give an example, I make a joke all the time about a Nokia story. And so maybe I'll do that joke with you guys actually, which is, who had a Nokia 15 years ago? Who would admit we all had a Nokia 15 years ago, right? That's the truth of it, everybody. Or you had a BlackBerry, or maybe you had one of them Motorola's that, the flip phone where you felt really cool when you had a flip, right? The question I'm asking you now is, where are they now? Where is Nokia now? Absolutely blown out the water. They're nowhere. Why? Because they didn't have diversity of thinking. didn't have diversity. It doesn't matter how many Asian people, how many women, how many LGBT work for Nokia. The fact is, they didn't have diversity of thinking. They didn't see the challenge coming from two industries that were not in their industry. They were telecoms, but the people who challenged them were not in telecoms. One was a company that made technology, mostly televisions, Samsung, and one was mostly PCs, Apple. And they absolutely blew them out of the market. Now, I understand Nokia were going to make a smartphone, weren't quick enough to market, asking the wrong questions. Because if you asked us what we wanted to do with our phone 15 years ago, we wouldn't have said, I want to watch Sky Sports. Because the screen was so small, it was ridiculous. We couldn't even, there's no way you would have wanted to watch TV on that screen. It was too small, right? Because all the thinking was the phones will get smaller. But that's the wrong way of thinking. That's because telecoms people are thinking, how do I make the phone smaller? Apple and Samsung were thinking, how do we expand and create technology that it expands in people's lives? And we go after the marketplace, which is young people. You see, because a phone was predominantly owned by workers and business people. But what they realized, the other two companies, is everybody could own a phone. And literally everywhere I've been in the world, people own a phone. It's a great market. So these are just examples I'm giving of how do you blend sort of diversity strategies with serious corporate advantages in the workplace. And we've got McKinsey's done some evidence that shows that the more diverse you are in particularly gender and ethnicity, this is from US research, it shows that these organizations are demonstrating to be making greater profits over time. So I don't want to take up too much more time, but that's just kind of my thing about stories. And then of course, putting that all together in some kind of strategy and smart action plan. I think too many organizations are scared to say what they want to achieve. So it's this kind of very bland, we want to be more diverse, but what does that mean? It's very wishy-washy. And 10 years from now, people are saying, well, we're more diverse than we were 10 years ago, but nobody can write down what that actually looks like. What does it actually mean? And how much more money do you want to make? How many days off sick are your staff taking because they're not included, and all that sort of stuff. So I just think it's very important. You have fantastic data and data that's actually looked at, because I go into so many organizations and challenge them around their data, and they go, oh, sorry, where did you get that from? Because they challenge me and they think I just made it up. And I said, it's your data you've been reporting to yourselves for years. And guess what? Nobody's actually really looking at it, because you're just seeing it every week. Like you look at your cat or your dog and you don't even notice that the cat or the dog has changed color a little bit, because it's so gradual that you just don't notice until somebody comes along and goes, why's the cat gone red? Or whatever, gone brown or whatever. Last time I came, the cat was black. But the point I'm making is that you don't notice what you stop looking at. You just keep looking at the same thing, reporting in the same way. Nobody bangs you on the head and says, there's an elephant in the room, you've got an issue of unconscious bias, likely on age or something like that. And so that's just me rounding off. I could talk all day, but that's just for me on linking the two, diversity and the business case.
Great, thank you so much, Asari. Great example. And I love, what the examples that you gave. And I think what I picked up from your talk is cut to the chase. Just tell us straight, be bland. We're not sure what we're doing. We've done this so far, but we do need some help. We put our hand up. We haven't been the best. Help us out. And I think people do respect that. People don't realize that. People do really respect that when they say, look, I really don't know, but hey, maybe you can help me. And it's really great because we've got, 5 wonderful speakers and a great team behind the scenes that can help organizations to address their diversity. And it's all about diversity within. So thank you so much, Asari. Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you, Sam, as well. And thank you to everyone that's joined us. And thank you to the team behind the scenes, Anthony, Amanda, Roxanne, and Hannah, who've been helping us to make this event happen today. So, okay, so just moving on, just before we wrap up, we're going to be wrapping up shortly. So as you can see, we've got a lot of experts here within the diversity within, and who do we reach? So maybe you want to reach the diverse audiences, and from my perspective, I'm speaking specifically, on ethnicity. So my areas within diversity is on ethnicity, race, and gender. So for someone like myself, if you wanted help, can help you reach the consumers, the businesses, the traders, the medias, the community leaders, the opinion formers, the ones that can help make decisions, the parents, all of those things are areas where we can help you to build and reach the community. Because many people say that people from ethnic backgrounds are unreachable. Well, they are reachable. It's just knowing where to reach them and how to reach them. And that's what we can help you to do. Next slide. So we've talked about some examples of how we can make a difference and make a change. But sometimes it can cost us a lot of money when we get it wrong. Anything that we do, whether it's being within the workplace, you know, even at home, might make a pizza, haven't got all the right ingredients, and say, right, let me try it with this and see what happens. And it can go absolutely wrong. And we've seen a lot of that within the diversity and inclusion arena. And we know the cost of getting it wrong can really build up the barriers. Next slide. So the cost of getting it wrong, we know we can help you to make or avoid costly mistakes. Next slide. We know it creates barriers. It can isolate a community, can lead to legal issues, and also lose trust. Next slide. So I've got a couple examples here, and these ones you're probably familiar with. We are sorry. Don't know if you remember back in 2018, Gucci had to apologize and remove a sweater that was around, I think, £1,000, around $800 US. And they basically had to apologize because the sweater was basically not right in terms of the blackface, and it caused a backlash, and they had to make a big apology, and that cost them a lot of money. It dented, you know, their reputation, their credibility. And, you know, sometimes when you get it wrong, you can't always take it back. So they had to make a public apology. And who remembers the H&M, you know, the little boy that had the monkey jumper on? H&M had to apologize for that. And I know there was a boycott a few years ago where you were getting a lot of people from ethnic minorities that were not even shopping in H&M because they were boycotting it because of this mistake. So it's really important, you know, as those of you that want to reach the diverse communities, that you get some advice. And, you know, the cost of getting it wrong can be very costly, and it is good to avoid that. But you may not know what you're doing, but we are here, and there are many D&I specialists that can help you. Next slide. And then we've got the We Not Sorry, which made history. Everyone remembers the Edward Colston statue, you know, Black Lives Matters, the protest, Bristol 2020. You know, that was when history was made, where everyone was fed up of seeing that statue every single day. And then the Black Lives Matters came, and a few people just decided, well, let's just knock it down and let it drop in the water. And they didn't mind going to court and actually getting penalized and getting fined for it because, you know, because the community were fed up. You know, so it's looking at diversity from different perspectives that will make a difference. And we know that Black Lives Matters and other protests have made a difference. And we've seen, you know, that diversity has come a long way. And as I said earlier, the 2011 census, you know, was saying that 13% of the population are from an ethnic minority. Well, the results that come up for 2021, which are going to be in May 2022, the figure's going to be much higher. And obviously we've got lots of changes, you know, with the Brexit, and, you know, we're not having a lot of communication with the EU. There's going to be a new influx of people coming from around the world, from places such as India and Africa, South America, to help the UK, be it the health sector, you know, be it hospitality, be it retail. You know, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of diversity. So it's how you within your workplace or within your organization can be more ethically diverse, whether it's from a HR perspective, as all the speakers have said earlier, down to marketing and communication, how you get those messages out. Next slide. So I've talked about what we've done, so I won't talk too much on that. This was recorded as well. So, you know, anyone that wants a copy of the recordings, we can send it to you and you can share it within your organization. Next slide. And I think just to end, you know, for what we do and what we've done within diversity, within Rich Visions, within all the campaigns and work that we have done, you know, our biggest campaign was the one we did in 2011, which was the Digital UK campaign, which was the TV switchover. I don't know if everybody remembers that in 2011, all the TVs were switching over from analog to digital, and the BBC needed to get that information out to the communities as best they could. And they had to look at reaching the ethnic communities. And we, as an agency, were able to get the brief. It was a massive contract, around £1 million, one of the biggest BAME campaigns that had been done for that particular year. And we won the brief. And it was very interesting because we had to reach out to all the different communities and explain, if you don't do something by this particular date, your TV is going to be blank. And it's as simple as it sounds. It wasn't, because you was reaching to different communities. You need to look at language barriers. You need to look at culture. You needed to make sure that the message was well understood. And I remember when we first started that campaign about a year, just about 18 months before the actual switchover date, which was in April, I believe 2012 or so, we had to do some research, and we had to do some research to say, how do we get the messages out to all these communities? So looking at community leaders, influencers, ambassadors, and how do we break it down by the communities? And when do we send a message, and what's the best time, and what's the best way, and the best methods? And it was very interesting because we had to do some research on when do we send out this message. And it was a very interesting one, because for the Chinese community, the research that we found is that we needed to tell the Chinese community minus 6 months to the campaign that, right, something's going to happen if you don't do something with your TV. And we had to keep, plugging the message over 6 months from the research. And then we also realized for the African Caribbean community, 6 months was too early. We needed to tell them minus 1 month, even though we were giving them messages, but then as it got to the last month, we had to intensify the campaign to reach that specific community. So it was a real eye opener. Lots of research came from it. There was so many different areas that we had to work on, from the research to the communications, to the marketing, to the messaging, to the imagery, to actually getting the feedback and people actually, being prepared for the switchover. So that was one that, we're really proud of and really happy to share. And we could tell you more on that if anyone wants to know about it. Next slide. So this one I found the other day as well. And it's also, even though we've been talking about diversity and inclusion from a CSR perspective and within the workplace, the commercial side, the commercial viability of the Black and brown pound. And I saw this article the other day in The Independent, which was saying that banks are losing millions by overlooking the black pound. It was just saying that a high percentage of the ethnic audience are paying into pensions. If I remember correctly, it was like £268 million a month that's being paid into pension pots, private pension pots. And what the article was saying is that the mainstream banks are losing out because a lot of the ethnic minorities are using private small companies for their pensions, and the banks were not basically promoting some of their insurances and covers to the Black and brown or Black and ethnic community. And they were just giving some really good figures, some statistics, and saying, look, banks, you need to wake up and see that this is a very huge community who have a huge spending power and are, spending on, things like pensions. So that was a really good article. And if anyone wants to know about the article, I'm happy to share that. Okay, thank you. Next slide. And next slide. Okay, so yes, there was a couple of did you knows, as I said earlier on. So 87% of the population for the 2011 census were white, with 13% being non-white. £230 million a month is spent on ethnic minorities, spent on hair and beauty in the UK. And it's really interesting because a lot of people may not realize that if you have a black, darker skin, when you have a shower each day, you need to use some form of moisturizer or cream to put onto your skin. And, that makes it makes your household bills quite costly, because apart from having your kind of daily groceries, you still also have to think about cosmetics in terms of things like buying things like cocoa butter and shea butter. But a lot of people are not aware of that. So when you look at the spend on hair and beauty within the ethnic minority community, it actually makes sense. And then there you go, 268 million a month spent into pensions, and the banks overlooking the market in terms of marketing their financial products. Okay, next slide. So reaching the unreachable, we can help you reach. And as I said, there's a range of ways of how we can help you. So whether it's the millennials, Generation X, young people from the BAME community, mixed heritage, we can help you to reach those. So anything, you know, in terms of reaching out to their media, whether it be music, news, politics, and so forth. Next slide. And, you know, we can look at location, look at age, we can look at socioeconomic status, religion, generation, ethnicity. I was given an example the other day that I'm actually, you know, my mum came here in 1972, I was born, you know, next generation down here in the UK. And then I have my daughter and son, and my son is 27 and my daughter's 21. So they're like next generation down. And then I have a grandson who's of mixed parenting, who is 2 years old, who is another generation down. So just imagine trying to reach out to, you know, anyone ranging from my mum down to even my grandson. You see that, you know, there's going to be different ways that you have to reach in different methods because of the way that we've been brought up and how we digest information. If I saw an article in the independent newspaper for a certain job, I think, okay, that looks good. And if I saw it again in an ethnic paper, I think, oh gosh, they're appealing to me. Let me have a look into this more. So it's about understanding the population and how to reach them and breaking it down into the different areas. Next slide. Next slide. Just don't want to take too much of the time because I just want to wrap up. So as we wrap up, as we can find out from today, is that, you know, ignorance is bliss, yes, but it's very costly. It can be very costly in your pocket if you don't get your diversity inclusion right. So whether it's, you know, from a money perspective, people, you know, not coming to work anymore, people just leaving, or people just basically going around and publicly saying, well, this organization is really not a great organization to work with, or, you know, you have within your area of work where you just see nobody that looks like you. So some of the tips that I would give, and I believe all of the consultants here would agree with me, it's about doing your research and understanding and cutting to the chase. As Sari gave some examples earlier on. Add diversity flair to show that you care. And I think that's important. At the end of the day, it is about caring. It is about, you know, showing that, yes, we want to add some diversity flair and we want to have a diverse audience. As Asari's example said, they all went to the same university. Okay, they were different because some were white men and Asian men, but they all went to the same university. So their mindset of them coming to work within the workplace will always be the same. There's no diversity there. So adding that diversity flair, calling on the experts like us, don't guess, ask. We've seen from some of those articles there with the H&M and the Gucci, and showcase your success stories, because I think that's really important. Showcase what you've done. As Asari said earlier, you know, what have you done? Okay, we've been doing this for 10 years, but let's see the success stories. Let's see the actual, you know, evidence of what's happened, because, you know, once people see that, they can go, oh, okay, yeah, they have made a difference, and we've seen that than just ticking boxes. And I think a lot of organizations are waking up and are making a difference and actually not paying lip service. They're actually doing something, but it's showcasing that and let people see that, because we want to see success stories. Okay, next slide. So if anyone's interested in what we do, we're happy to share. So we've got our diversity calendar for 2022. If anyone wants a copy of that calendar, it's a calendar that gives religious dates and also information on diverse events that happen within the diverse communities, mostly from a BAME community, and also religious festivals. We also have a D&I monthly club. So we're launching our monthly club. It's going to be going from today. We officially launch it today. And every month we're going to be talking about a topic and having our consultants, and they're going to be speaking about a certain area. And that will help you in terms of your diversity and inclusion campaigns. And we also got some master classes that are happening as well. Next slide. We're doing lots of lunch and learns. So if any of you here are interested in the lunch and learn, I did one last week for a PR agency. It was really interesting. Had about 40 people on the lunch and learn, and they were asking lots of questions about diversity and inclusion and how they could improve within their agency and organization from a HR perspective and also communications perspective as well. So anyone's interested in the lunch and learn, please get in touch. Next slide. Yep. Next slide. The diversity calendar, as we said, we're so thrilled. So it's all about significant dates within the EDI calendar, and that will help you to celebrate more positive representation of the diverse community and BAME group. So if anyone's interested, please do let us know. There's going to be a link that we're going to be putting in the chat, or you could just put in the chat that you're interested in the calendar, and we can send that over to you. Yes, next slide. I think we've got some images of it. So as you can see, here's the month of March, and you can see all the different things and activities that are taking place. And we've got the kind of standard ones as well, like Shrove Tuesday, Ash Wednesday. Then we've got things like International Women's Day, and then we've got St. Patrick's Day. And we also have a Hindu festival and Ghana Independence, for example. Next slide. So our next date for our next meeting for the Diversity and Inclusion Club is on March the 15th, and we're going to be giving an overview on the BAME communities and how you could reach them effectively. And in April, we'll be talking about making your communications campaigns more appealing to diverse audiences. So we're going to be here every single month with some of our consultants and other experts as well that will be helping you to really take your D&I to another level. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So anyone that's interested to be part of the Diversity and Inclusion Club, you can have access to 4 breakfast seminars throughout the year, 4 networking events. We're going to be doing 2 virtual, and towards the end of the year, we're going to be doing some face-to-face, because obviously we're still easing off with the pandemic. And then we're going to have access to our diversity group, monthly newsletter, and some best practice guides as well, the do's and don'ts. We're going to be covering that with the club as well. Next slide. And then any of you that may have some briefs and proposals, you can call in on us and some of our experts as well. Maybe you're looking for a diaspora media list of the different media that's out there for the BAME community or diverse community. It could be LGBT community. We can help you with that. You can have a free diagnostics, or you want to reach out to some influencers and you're not sure, we can help you. So being one of our members is also great too. Next slide. And the next slide. So if anyone's interested, it's 1,200 for the whole year. If anyone's interested in becoming a member of our diversity club, and you also get quite a lot of freebies and lots of information. And if you're interested and you want to pay today, or within the month of February or March, we are doing that for £499. Okay. So as you know, if you need the help, get in touch. And thank you so much. Thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to everyone that's joined us. And we'll be putting a link in the chat. We would appreciate your feedback. So please do put in a link, do spend 5 minutes just to give us some feedback on how you found today. If there's anything that you would like to know, or you want to get more information, we'll be sending you the link. We'll put it in the chat, and we'll also email you as well, so that you're able to fill out the form, give us the feedback. And maybe you might be wanting to hear more from our speakers that spoke today, our consultants, or looking for something in particular. We can definitely help you. So we'll put the feedback form in the chat, and we'll leave it up there for everyone to take a note of it. If not, we will also send it to everybody that joined today. And we also had quite a few people that didn't make it, so we will be sharing this presentation and everything with them. And please spread the word. We are here to help. We are here to help you build bridges and not walls. Thank you so much. Next slide. Great. And there's our contact details. Thank you so much, everybody, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you to everyone that's joined. Goodbye.
Hold on.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you, Mavis, and everyone.
So much for coming too.